On my first day at the new job, I found a photograph of my husband on a coworker's desk. I smiled and asked, "Who is that?" She beamed with pride and replied, "That's my boyfriend. We've been together for 3 years and we're getting married at the end of the year." In that moment, it felt as if the entire world had gone silent. My heart didn't stop, but it certainly forgot how to beat normally. I had spent years navigating high-pressure corporate environments, handling multi-million-dollar campaigns, and solving crises that would make most people panic. I thought I knew how to stay calm under pressure. I was wrong. My name is Allison Davis, and at 32 years old, I had just started a new position as Senior Marketing Manager at TechSphere, one of the fastest-growing technology firms in New York City. It was supposed to be the beginning of an exciting new chapter in my career. I had arrived early that morning determined to make a strong first impression. My new workspace was separated from the next desk by a frosted glass divider. On the other side sat a young woman named Maya Jenkins. She greeted me with a bright smile, introduced herself as my project assistant, and immediately seemed warm, friendly, and easy to work with. Everything felt normal until my eyes drifted toward the silver picture frame sitting on the corner of her desk. The second I saw the photograph, the air left my lungs. The man smiling back from that frame was Michael Davis, my husband, not someone who resembled him, not someone who could be mistaken for him. It was Michael, the same man who had kissed me goodbye that morning before leaving our apartment. The same man who had spent the last 7 years building a life with me. The same man who had wrapped his arms around me the night before and wished me luck on my first day at the new company. I recognized every detail in that picture. The navy blue polo shirt he was wearing was one I had given him as an anniversary gift. The beach in the background was from our vacation in Maui. I knew that photograph because I had personally framed it years ago. Somehow, a picture that belonged in my bedroom was now sitting on another woman's desk. For a few seconds, I couldn't think. My mind desperately searched for an explanation that would make sense, but none existed. Instead of reacting emotionally, I forced myself to sit down and open my laptop. Years of professional experience had taught me how to hide shock behind a calm expression. If I was going to survive whatever this was, I needed answers before I needed emotions. After pretending to review some onboarding documents, I casually turned toward Maya and nodded toward the frame. "Who's the guy in the picture?" I asked with what I hoped sounded like harmless curiosity. Maya's face instantly lit up. It was the kind of smile people get when talking about someone they truly love. She reached for the frame and gently pulled it closer. "That's Michael," she said proudly. "My boyfriend." Every muscle in my body tightened. Somehow, I still managed to smile. Maya continued speaking, completely unaware that every word was driving another knife into my chest. "We've been together for 3 years," she said. "He proposed last month, and we're planning our wedding for the end of the year." 3 years. The number echoed through my mind like an explosion. Michael and I had been married for 7 years. That meant he had been living a second life for nearly half our marriage. I should have been furious. I should have stood up and told her the truth immediately. Instead, I stayed perfectly still. Something deep inside me understood that this conversation was too important to ruin with emotion. Maya wasn't my enemy. Looking at her, I could see genuine happiness in her eyes. She truly believed she was talking about the man she was going to marry. She had absolutely no idea she was describing my husband. "Congratulations," I said softly. "You must be excited." Maya laughed and held up her hand, proudly showing off an enormous diamond engagement ring. The stones sparkled under the office lights. "I still can't believe it," she admitted. "Michael said he wanted to give me everything I deserve." I felt my stomach twist painfully. Years earlier, Michael had convinced me that expensive jewelry was unnecessary. He always claimed that love wasn't measured by the size of a diamond. I had believed him because I trusted him. I wore a simple wedding band and felt proud of our modest approach to marriage. Now I realized the truth. Michael didn't dislike luxury. He simply preferred spending it on someone else. Keeping my expression neutral, I asked what Michael did for a living. Maya explained that he worked in investment finance and was incredibly successful. She described him as hardworking, ambitious, and caring. According to her, he was always busy but somehow still found time to make her feel special. Listening to her was like hearing someone describe a completely different man than the one I thought I knew. As the conversation continued, Maya told me they had met at a financial conference in Dallas. Michael had been a guest speaker and she had approached him afterward. According to her, he had been hesitant at first, but eventually she won him over. Then she smiled dreamily and repeated something he had told her. "He said I'm the woman who finally made him want to settle down." The irony nearly made me choke. Settle down? He was already married. He already had a home, a wife, and a life. Yet somehow he had convinced this young woman that she was his future. The rest of the morning passed in a blur. I attended meetings, shook hands with executives, and discussed marketing strategies while pretending everything was normal. Outwardly, I looked calm and professional. Internally, my entire reality was collapsing. Every memory from the last 3 years suddenly felt suspicious. Every late-night meeting Michael attended. Every unexpected business trip, every weekend he claimed to be working, every time he came home exhausted and distracted. I had trusted him completely, which meant I had never bothered looking for signs. Now those signs were everywhere. At lunch, I joined several coworkers, including Maya. She spent most of the meal talking about Michael. She described their engagement, their future wedding, and the luxury condo they planned to buy together after they got married. Every detail felt like another revelation. Michael wasn't having a brief affair. He wasn't making a temporary mistake. He was building an entirely separate future while still married to me. The realization was horrifying, but it also gave me clarity. This wasn't something I could confront impulsively. If Michael had managed to maintain a second life for 3 years, then he was far more calculating than I had ever imagined. That evening, as I left the office, my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Michael. "How was your first day, beautiful?" Just 24 hours earlier, that message would have made me smile. Now it made me sick. I stared at the screen for several seconds before typing a simple reply. It was fine. His response came almost immediately. "Glad to hear it. I'll be home late tonight. Client dinner." I looked at those 2 words, client dinner, and felt something inside me change forever. Yesterday, I would have believed him without hesitation. Today, I understood that every excuse, every delay, and every business obligation might have been another lie. As I stepped onto the crowded Manhattan sidewalk and watched the evening traffic rush past, I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront Michael. Not yet. Anger would only warn him that I knew something. Emotion would give him time to hide evidence and cover his tracks. No, I was going to stay silent. I was going to learn everything first. Every secret, every lie, every stolen dollar. And when the truth finally came crashing down, Michael Davis wouldn't see it coming. He thought he was the one controlling the game. What he didn't know was that from this moment forward, I was no longer playing defense. I was gathering evidence, and his carefully constructed double life was about to become the biggest mistake he had ever made. That night, I arrived home long before Michael. The apartment looked exactly the same as it always had. The gray velvet sofa, the dining table we had spent weeks choosing together, the artwork from our anniversary trips, and the photographs scattered throughout the living room all told the story of a happy marriage. To anyone else, it would have looked like the home of a successful couple building a future together. But for the first time, I saw it differently. Every object suddenly felt like part of a carefully constructed illusion. The life I thought I had might never have existed at all. Around 8 o'clock, Michael sent another message. "Dinner is running late. Don't wait up." I stared at the screen and felt absolutely nothing. No anger. No heartbreak, just a cold determination. The shock from earlier had already started transforming into something more dangerous. I wasn't interested in hearing excuses anymore. I wanted facts. I wanted proof. Most importantly, I wanted to know exactly how much of my life had been built on lies. When Michael finally came home close to 11, he looked exactly as he always did. Relaxed, confident, comfortable. He greeted me with a kiss on the forehead, asked about my first day, and casually mentioned that the client meeting had gone well. Watching him speak was surreal. Every sentence sounded practiced. Every smile felt manufactured. For 7 years, I had believed this man was incapable of betraying me. Now I was beginning to realize that he had probably been lying for so long that dishonesty had become second nature. That night, after he fell asleep beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. Michael slept peacefully, completely unaware that his entire world was beginning to unravel. As I listened to his steady breathing, I made a promise to myself. I would not confront him until I knew everything. If he had spent 3 years building a secret life, then I would spend however long it took exposing every piece of it. The next morning, I arrived at TechSphere early. Maya was already there, happily organizing her desk. The silver picture frame remained in its usual place. Every time I looked at it, I felt a fresh reminder of why I needed answers. Maya greeted me with her usual cheerful energy and immediately started talking about Michael. Apparently, he had taken her to an expensive restaurant the night before. She described the dinner in detail, smiling the entire time. As she talked, I remembered the message Michael had sent me about his client meeting. The timelines matched perfectly. For the first time, I realized something important. Michael wasn't just balancing 2 relationships. He was maintaining 2 completely separate realities. One version of him existed with me, the loyal husband working long hours to support our future. The other version existed with Maya, the devoted fiancée preparing for marriage. Neither woman knew the complete truth. The only person benefiting from the arrangement was Michael. Throughout the day, I paid closer attention to Maya's stories. She talked about plans for a luxury condominium in Hudson Yards. She talked about wedding venues, designer dresses, and future vacations. Every conversation revealed another promise Michael had made to her. What disturbed me most was how genuine she sounded. Maya wasn't helping him deceive me. She genuinely believed she was the love of his life. After work, I returned home with a clear objective. I needed to follow the money. Michael often handled our finances because of his investment background. For years, I trusted him completely. We shared accounts, savings, and investment portfolios. I never felt the need to monitor every transaction because I believed we were partners. Now that trust felt incredibly foolish. The next morning, while Michael left early for another supposed business meeting, I opened my laptop and logged into our joint banking accounts. At first, everything appeared normal. Mortgage payments, utility bills, credit card expenses, grocery purchases, the usual financial activity of a married couple. Then I noticed a wire transfer, $2,500. The recipient's name was Maya Jenkins. My stomach dropped. I stared at the screen for several seconds before scrolling further. Another transfer, then another. Then another. Over the last year alone, Michael had transferred tens of thousands of dollars directly to Maya. Some payments were small, others were substantial. By the time I finished reviewing the statements, the total exceeded $45,000. I sat back in my chair and tried to process what I was seeing. Michael wasn't simply having an affair. He was financing a completely separate life using our shared money. My money, the deeper I looked, the worse it became. Just 2 weeks earlier, a massive withdrawal had been made from one of our savings accounts. $50,000 had been transferred to a luxury real estate development company. At first, the name meant nothing to me. Then I remembered Maya's excitement about the condo in Hudson Yards. The pieces instantly connected. The down payment, Michael had used money from our joint savings account to purchase a future home for another woman. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. Most people would have cried. Most people would have called their spouse immediately. Instead, I opened a spreadsheet, every transfer, every date, every amount, every suspicious transaction. I documented everything. If Michael wanted to play games, then I would play them better. Later that afternoon, I called the only person I trusted enough to share the truth. Sarah had been my closest friend since college, but she was also one of the best family law attorneys in New York. If anyone could help me navigate this situation, it was her. When we met that evening at a quiet coffee shop in Manhattan, I told her everything: the photograph, the engagement ring, the lies, the bank transfers, the condo. Sarah listened without interrupting. By the time I finished, her expression had become frighteningly serious. "This is bigger than infidelity," she finally said. "What do you mean?" "He's using marital assets to fund another relationship. If what you're telling me is accurate, he's exposing himself to enormous legal consequences." For the first time in days, I felt a small sense of relief, not because I wanted revenge, because I finally understood something. Michael wasn't the mastermind he thought he was. He had become careless. 3 years of getting away with deception had made him arrogant. And arrogant people make mistakes. Sarah leaned forward across the table. "From now on, don't confront him. Don't argue. Don't even hint that you know. Document everything, every receipt, every transfer, every lie. Let him keep talking." I nodded. That was exactly what I intended to do. The following day delivered another devastating piece of evidence. At the office, Maya arrived glowing with excitement. Before I could even sit down, she started telling me about a surprise Michael had planned. "He put the deposit down on our condo," she said proudly. "We're going to move in right after the wedding." I nearly laughed at the absurdity of it. The deposit, I had seen the transaction myself. Michael had used money from my marriage to buy a dream home for his future bride, yet somehow Maya still believed he was a hero. As she continued talking, a delivery man arrived carrying a large designer shopping bag. Maya opened it excitedly and revealed a pair of expensive luxury heels. "Michael sent them," she said happily. I immediately remembered another credit card charge I had noticed while reviewing our statements, $950. Now I knew exactly where it had gone. Every piece of evidence fit perfectly. Every lie connected. Every excuse had a matching receipt. For the first time since discovering the truth, I felt completely certain this wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a temporary affair. Michael had spent years building an entirely new future while secretly dismantling the one we had built together. And he still had absolutely no idea that I knew everything. By the end of that week, my investigation had uncovered enough evidence to destroy his carefully crafted double life. But deep down, I knew the biggest revelation was still waiting for me. Because if Michael was willing to risk his marriage, spend our money, and plan a second wedding behind my back, then there was one question I still needed answered. How far was he truly willing to go? The next few days became the most emotionally exhausting period of Allison's life. Every morning she walked into TechSphere, sat a few feet away from Maya, and listened as the young woman happily described a future that had been built on lies. Maya talked about wedding plans, luxury condos, designer shoes, and the investment firm she and Michael were supposedly building together. The worst part wasn't the betrayal anymore. It was seeing how completely innocent Maya was. She genuinely believed she had found the perfect man. She had no idea she was being used as a piece in Michael's carefully constructed double life. One Thursday morning, Maya rolled her chair over with a huge smile on her face and asked Allison for professional advice. She excitedly opened a presentation on her laptop and explained that Michael was launching his own investment company. She proudly showed Allison the branding materials and the investor pitch deck she had been helping prepare. Allison kept her expression calm as she reviewed the slides. Then her eyes landed on something that made her stomach tighten. The company was called M&M Capital Partners. At first glance it looked innocent, but Allison immediately understood what it meant. Michael and Maya. She continued scrolling and felt another wave of anger rise inside her. Listed on the executive structure page was Michael as CEO and Maya as a 20% equity partner. The realization hit her hard. Michael wasn't simply having an affair. He was creating an entirely new future using money that legally belonged to his wife. That evening, Allison couldn't stop thinking about what she had seen. Instead of going home, she visited the corporate address listed in the presentation. The office was located inside a newly renovated Midtown building. From the hallway, she could hear Michael confidently pitching investors while Maya sat beside him, acting like a supportive business partner. Standing outside that office, Allison finally saw the full picture. Michael wasn't planning to maintain two lives forever. He was preparing to replace one life with another. The condo, the company, the engagement ring, and the future promises all pointed toward the same conclusion. He intended to leave Allison after securing everything he needed. When Allison returned home that night, she immediately called Sarah and explained everything she had discovered. Sarah listened carefully before delivering the verdict Allison already expected. If Michael had used marital assets to fund a company while gifting ownership shares to his mistress, the legal consequences would be devastating. Every document Allison collected strengthened her position. Sarah reminded her once again not to confront him prematurely. The goal was no longer proving infidelity. The goal was ensuring there would be consequences. The next morning, Allison sat across from Michael during breakfast as though nothing had changed. He talked casually about business opportunities and upcoming meetings while sipping coffee. Watching him lie had become almost fascinating. He looked completely comfortable, completely confident. He had no idea that his wife now knew about the secret company, the condo, the money transfers, and the years of deception. Every smile he gave her felt rehearsed. Every excuse sounded hollow. Yet Allison played her role perfectly. She smiled when necessary and responded calmly, allowing him to remain trapped inside the illusion that he still controlled the situation. At the office later that day, Maya could barely contain her excitement. The investor launch party was scheduled for Friday evening at the Plaza Hotel, and she treated it like the most important event of her life. She proudly told Allison that Michael believed this night would change everything. Major investors would attend, funding would be secured, their future would officially begin. Maya even asked Allison to help choose between several dresses. Allison studied the photos before recommending the elegant white dress. Maya immediately agreed and thanked her. Watching the young woman smile made Allison feel a strange mixture of sadness and determination. Maya wasn't her enemy. She was simply another victim who hadn't discovered the truth yet. After work, Allison visited an upscale department store and purchased a stunning black designer dress. She wasn't buying it to impress anyone. She was buying it for battle. The dress was elegant, powerful, and impossible to ignore. When she looked at herself in the mirror, she no longer saw a betrayed wife. She saw a woman who had spent weeks gathering evidence and preparing for a single decisive moment. Friday finally arrived. Throughout the day, Maya floated around the office like someone preparing for a fairy tale ending. She left early for salon appointments and final preparations. Allison wished her good luck before returning to her work. Once Maya disappeared, Allison quietly shut down her laptop and gathered her things. Her own preparations had already been completed. Every document was organized, every financial record was saved, every photograph and transaction had been backed up. She wasn't walking into the Plaza Hotel with accusations. She was walking in with proof. By late afternoon, Allison sat in a luxury salon overlooking Manhattan. As stylists worked on her hair and makeup, she stared at her reflection. She thought about the 7 years she had devoted to her marriage, the dreams she had built, the trust she had given, the sacrifices she had made. Most people imagine revenge as anger or destruction. But Allison realized her revenge wasn't emotional, it was clarity. She wasn't going to scream or create chaos. She was simply going to expose the truth in front of everyone Michael had been trying to impress. As evening approached, Allison stepped into an Uber and headed toward the Plaza Hotel. The city lights reflected against the windows while traffic crawled through Midtown. Her phone remained silent. No texts, no calls, no doubts. She knew exactly what was waiting inside that ballroom. Michael believed he was about to launch the greatest achievement of his life. Investors were arriving, his mistress would be by his side, his new company would take center stage. Everything he had spent years building was finally coming together. What Michael didn't know was that Allison was on her way, and before the night ended, every single lie would come crashing down. Friday night arrived, and for the first time in weeks, Allison felt completely calm. The fear, heartbreak, and confusion that had consumed her after discovering Michael's secret life had disappeared. All that remained was certainty. As her Uber pulled up to the Plaza Hotel, she stepped onto the sidewalk wearing a perfectly tailored black dress that radiated confidence and authority. The city lights reflected off the glass towers surrounding Midtown Manhattan, but Allison barely noticed. Her focus was entirely on what was waiting inside. Michael believed tonight would be the beginning of his new future. He had spent years carefully constructing a second life, building a relationship with Maya, creating a new investment company, and secretly moving marital assets into projects that would eventually support the life he planned to live without his wife. What he didn't realize was that tonight would not be the beginning of his future. It would be the end of the fantasy he had spent 3 years creating. Inside the ballroom, wealthy investors, business executives, and financial consultants mingled beneath crystal chandeliers. Waiters circulated with champagne while conversations filled the elegant space. At the front of the room, a massive screen displayed the logo for M&M Capital Partners. Standing proudly beneath it was Michael. Dressed in an expensive tuxedo and surrounded by potential investors, he looked completely in control. Beside him stood Maya in the white dress Allison had recommended. Maya looked happy, excited, and completely unaware that her entire world was about to collapse. Allison paused near the entrance and observed the scene for a moment. The sight almost felt surreal. Michael had managed to create an entirely separate reality for himself. He looked like a successful entrepreneur preparing to launch a new business. Maya looked like a devoted fiancée ready to support her future husband. Everyone in the room believed they were witnessing the beginning of a success story. Then Allison began walking toward them. At first, nobody paid attention. She moved through the crowd calmly, accepting a glass of champagne from a passing waiter. Conversations continued. Laughter echoed across the ballroom. Then Michael looked up and saw her. The change in his expression was immediate. The confident smile vanished. The color drained from his face. His body froze. For several seconds, he simply stared, unable to process what he was seeing. Maya noticed his reaction and turned toward Allison with a confused smile. She seemed genuinely happy to see her coworker. "Allison, what are you doing here?" she asked. Allison stopped directly in front of them and offered a calm smile. Then she looked at Michael. "Aren't you going to introduce us?" she asked. The question instantly created tension. Maya looked from Allison to Michael and back again. Michael opened his mouth, but no words came out. Allison could see panic spreading across his face. The same man who had spent years lying effortlessly suddenly looked incapable of speaking. The surrounding investors began noticing the awkward silence. Several people turned their attention toward the small group. Maya's smile slowly faded. Something was clearly wrong. She looked at Michael again. "Do you two know each other?" she asked. Allison answered before Michael could speak. "Very well," she said calmly. Then she turned toward the crowd. "My name is Allison Davis. I've been married to Michael for 7 years. The room fell silent. The words spread through the ballroom like a shockwave. Investors exchanged confused glances. Maya stared at Allison as though she had misunderstood the sentence. "Married?" she whispered. Her face lost all color. She looked at Michael desperately, waiting for him to deny it, waiting for him to explain, but Michael couldn't. Because there was no explanation left, only the truth. Tears immediately formed in Maya's eyes. "Michael, tell me she's lying," she pleaded. The desperation in her voice broke Allison's heart. Maya wasn't the villain. She was another victim. Another person who had trusted the same liar. Michael tried to regain control of the situation. He asked Allison to step outside and discuss things privately. But Allison shook her head. "Why would I do that?" she asked. "You didn't keep your affair private. You didn't keep our money private. Why should I keep your secrets private?" Then she calmly removed several documents from her purse and placed them on a nearby table. The investors moved closer. Financial records, bank statements, wire transfers, condo payments, every piece of evidence she had spent weeks collecting. Allison explained exactly how Michael had transferred large amounts of marital money to Maya, funded a luxury condo, and used joint assets to launch the company standing behind him. One by one, the investors reviewed the documents. The mood in the room changed instantly. Excitement was replaced by concern. Then concern became disgust. An older investor finally set the documents down and looked directly at Michael. The disappointment on his face was unmistakable. He informed Michael that nobody in the room would risk investing in a company connected to potential fraud, marital asset disputes, and legal complications. Within minutes, investors began leaving. Conversations ended. Business cards disappeared back into pockets. Potential partnerships evaporated. Everything Michael had worked toward collapsed right before his eyes. Years of planning unraveled in less than 15 minutes. Meanwhile, Maya stood frozen. Tears streamed down her face as she processed the truth. Every memory she had cherished suddenly became contaminated. Every promise Michael had made was exposed as a lie. The engagement ring, the condo, the company, the future he described, it had all been built on deception. When Michael attempted to approach her, she stepped away. The heartbreak in her eyes was devastating. "You told me you loved me," she whispered. "You told me we were building a future together." Michael tried to explain, but there was nothing left to say. The truth had already spoken louder than any excuse ever could. Maya removed the engagement ring from her finger and dropped it into his hand before walking out of the ballroom. For the first time all night, Michael looked completely defeated. Within minutes, the ballroom was nearly empty. Investors were gone. Maya was gone. The launch party was over. Only Michael and Allison remained standing beneath the giant M&M Capital logo that now felt almost ridiculous. Michael stared at her with anger, humiliation, and defeat mixing together in his eyes. He accused her of destroying everything. Allison listened quietly before giving him one final answer. "I didn't destroy anything," she said. "You destroyed it the moment you started lying. All I did was show everyone the truth." Without another word, she turned and walked away. Outside, the cool Manhattan air felt different, lighter. For the first time in weeks, Allison could breathe without feeling crushed by betrayal. Her phone rang. It was Sarah. Allison smiled and answered. "It's done," she said simply. Sarah laughed. "Then congratulations, you just won." Later that night, Allison returned to the apartment she had once considered her forever home. Hours passed before Michael finally arrived. He looked exhausted, broken, and years older than he had that morning. They stood together on the balcony overlooking the Hudson River while the city lights shimmered below. For several moments, neither of them spoke. Finally, Michael apologized, not because he suddenly understood the damage he had caused, but because he had lost everything. Allison could hear it in his voice. He wasn't mourning the marriage. He was mourning the collapse of his plans. She listened quietly before delivering the final words of their relationship. "I want a divorce." Michael closed his eyes. There was no argument, no excuses, no lies. For the first time in 3 years, he had nothing left to behind. As he walked back inside, Allison remained on the balcony alone. The cold wind brushed against her face while she stared at the endless lights of New York City. 7 years of marriage had ended. The future she once imagined was gone, but surprisingly, she didn't feel broken. She felt free. Because sometimes the end of a lie is not a tragedy. Sometimes it's the beginning of a better life. And very soon I was about to find out.